I'll tell you also what a chacham from Manishtana I am. So it happened that 2 weeks ago in Shul, Zev Shurl, who's head of global connections for Federation, so he just says to me at Kiddush, he's like, I have a spot or two on this mission, which wasn't very well publicized, just a few people. And he's like, do you want to go? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, yeah. So it worked out after shops. It worked out, and actually, Racheli worked out with her boss that she could work remotely, and she went to Israel. It was a fantastic trip. But me being the chacham from Manishtana, so I said, okay, Gila's there. I'm not going to tell her that I'm going. We'll surprise her. It'll be like a nice haftarah. She's like, oh, I missed the family, and they're going to come visit. So dutifully, of course, I write a note to the Shiur saying, I'm going to Israel last minute, and I'm not going to give the Shiur this week. So
Oh, she's
Eliana,
on it.
right. So my Eliana, my daughter's like, she's like, Abba, isn't Gila on that list? And I'm like, oh. And then a minute later, Gila calls me up and like this, like on FaceTime, like, right. So, but it actually worked out well because she didn't know that Racheli was coming. And then when we got to Israel, it was pouring, pouring, pouring. So it saved me the spared me the having to go to her school and in the soaking rain, whatever. So I just made it. She came over to me, and then she saw her sister. There was a great video of them surprising each other. It was really, really cute. Anyway, but it was quite an incredible, intensive 3 days there, and we did a lot. And our federation has been really, really, really amazing. So. And I keep saying, I say it over and over, like if whatever you think about federation and other things, this is kind of what they're built for and what they're doing for Israel and for the community and galvanizing people and allocations. It's really been tremendous, and the information they're putting out. So I got to see firsthand, meeting with the partners. I think the best thing that happened overall is so because I promised Rachel I would give her like a little recap. She didn't want to be left out. But
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
so the first day we went, we did a lot of site visits. We went south, and we hear the horror stories, which I had seen already a few weeks earlier, but it doesn't get any easier. I can tell you that. Like every time you hear somebody's horror story, it's just awful. And meeting with the soldiers and the unity in the country and the things that people are doing to help everyone out. Really, really incredible, amazing. And seeing the sites, getting a tour of Ofakim, it's one of the partner cities. Ofakim is a partner city with Metro West, and so is Kibbutz Erez. So Kibbutz Erez now, they have now evacuated to Mitzpeh Ramon. So they are in the crater, and they've kind of taken over the hostel there and to see with them. And they have a great shop, is like, the saying of Ein Lanu Eretz Acheret. So they have Ein Lanu Erez Acheret. We don't have another Erez, and they have it with their logo. It's really nice. So we got to meet with them, and then we got a tour of Ofakim. We've been there for years and years, but they're like walking us through the streets, and right there by Safta Rachel's house. Like her house is like a bombed out, like you can't even imagine now. It's just an empty, full of bullet holes, empty place now. But like if you're looking on a street corner, a 4-point street corner, and you just look this way, this way, this way, you'll see like 12 different signs with pictures of like the people who were killed there and the heroics that they had to save the lives. And it was just really something. So and just meeting with the people and hearing their stories. So that was like the part, most of the first day, like, hit the ground running, going down and seeing everything. And it's very, very emotional, very intensive, very loud, very draining. So the next day, and it's also anybody who's been on these missions, I feel bad for the people that have to present to the people on the first day of the missions when they're sitting there like this at the table, like this. So, you sit at the table and they have like the same kind of cookie and the coffee and the tea, right? And everybody's like this. So the second day was a lot of site visits where we met with partner agencies. So like the Jewish Agency and the Joint Distribution Committee, and seeing where people have been relocated to, let's say, some of the hotels in Israel, and meeting with the families there and the youth movements, and they're helping them out. It's really quite fascinating the way what happened is that people had to like make their own government because the government's not functioning, and they had to just take over and say, like, we have to take over the social welfare. We have to take over this, and we have to take care of that. And really interesting. So we had one of these meetings with the joint, and there's a woman who is she's like heads one of the youth counseling departments. And it's like one of those typical agency meetings, they're boring, and you hear what they do, and it's important, don't get me wrong, but they're boring. And one guy actually just full on passed out in the meeting, and he was the guy sitting, of course, like the center table in front of the speakers like this. like that, and everybody loves taking the pictures of the person falling asleep in the meetings. But then this woman starts talking, and she's like, just starts telling her story. She's from Sderot. She's from Sderot, and she spent, almost 2 full days in her mamad, and she has two young kids and then a 1.5-year-old. And how do you keep a 1.5-year-old quiet? And her husband's a volunteer policeman, and they heard what was going on in the police station in Sderot. She finally gets out. She has to get out of there to get to Yerushalayim. On her way out, a missile lands a few meters from her car and like blows out her windows and her airbags. And somebody was killed, but she was okay. But she kind of like the kids are traumatized. Her husband had to go. He got called up. He was injured. He came back. He was a rifle trainer. He had a base where he would train people for firearms in Otef Aza, and the place was burned to the ground. So he lost his job. So he's working now for like 60% pay cut, and they're struggling. And he's injured. And then in the middle of this, she drops. She's like, "Oh, and by the way, and today's my daughter's birthday." And it's just very, very hard because she's 10 years old. And normally we have a cake and balloons and a present. And she's like, "Mommy, why don't we have that?" And she's like embarrassed to say, like, we just can't do it now. Like, I wanted to get you a gift. I just can't do it now. And it was just so, like humbling for her to have to say that to her kid. And she's telling us. And then she drops on us. And by the way, tomorrow is my son's bar mitzvah. And and he's like, I can't be with any of my friends because there's no shul. There's some relatives in Yerushalayim. They're going to do it in some random shul in Yerushalayim. No friends, hardly any family. And, it's really sad. So like you could just see everybody's wheels start turning. Next thing you know is we switched our entire program and we made the bar mitzvah for this kid. We went to the shul. And we went to the thing, and it was like the guy's like Sephardi. He's like, we're gonna do it a bridge service starting at 9:15. I never wore my tefillin so long in my whole life. What's Sephardi call in a bridge service? It was like I was gonna, I don't know, but it was really, really like they gave me an aliyah and I have video of it. But to like be able to really celebrate with this kid, and of course we got him a really incredible bar mitzvah gift, and we got the sister an incredible birthday gift. And if you could just see kind of I don't have words for it to describe the connection that you make with, this is a woman who doesn't know us from anybody, but she knows that we're there and that we care about her. And then they really feel the embrace of the diaspora and of everybody. And every single one of those little stories, every single one of those little things that we do makes such a huge difference. And this kid won't forget it the rest of his life. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but there was a bar mitzvah. Also, the one boy from Otef Aza who he was out jogging and his whole family was killed. So Rabbi Lau spoke at his bar mitzvah. And Rabbi Lau said to him, he says, when I was bar mitzvah, I also had no relatives.
Yes.
It's like, but you know what? You could do great things. You could do great things in your life if you have the love and support of the people around you. So I thought it was an unbelievable message. So to turn that, and the best part is that because we did that bar mitzvah, we were supposed to instead that morning, like go to some farm and like pick stuff. And I'm like, it's not for me. I'm good at a lot. I don't want to sit in the field and pick stuff. I know people who did it. I had friends that on similar trips that were there. They're like, yeah, oh yeah, we were not prepared for this. This is not for us. So we kind of like got that to a different group, but we did this, and then we actually went down to an army base and we made a barbecue for an army base, which was really meaningful. And just sitting there and then talking to the soldiers, talking to the families of hostages. So we had one, it was a scheduled meeting, and the guy's telling us about his brother who's kidnapped and what they're trying to do and what they're going through. He's like, there's no day, there's no night. Every day is just darkness. And usually I have a lot of questions. Like, what are you going to ask the guy? Like, how are you? What questions are to ask? So I just asked him. I said, can I say the tefillah for your brother? Can I say the tefillah for the hostages? And he said, yeah. And we said it, and like I couldn't even get through it. And of course, like at that minute, like two of my kids are there, and they're like, "Ugh, my father, he's so soft. He's always crying. Like he's just, they make fun of me." But it's just really like to them, every single one of those prayers, every single one of those engagements, and that's why they do it. That's why they're constantly running around to different places to speak to people. They're trying to raise as much awareness as possible. And that's our job. And that's one of the reasons also we call to make these trips and to spread the word, because they need to feel it, and we need to give testimony to people about what we see and what's going on there. So Dina, like when you go, you'll see. You have to. The best advice I could give you is just speak to every Israeli that you can. Just speak to them, because nobody's not affected by this. right? There's 0 degrees of separation, and you know, and also if you have still have the ability, if you have letters for soldiers, everywhere we went, the soldiers like, you have letters, you have cards for us, like they're asking us for it, like they want them. And seeing that how they sit there and they sit down and they read them intently, and then they like to hang them on their tanks or they put them in their walls in their offices. It's really quite something. So um it's it's really something. And then of course, you know, you see the general mood in Israel is, you know, it varies day by day, from despair to hope to excitement to, I mean, when we were there, it was still it was just the ending of the ceasefire. So they were still getting hostages home. So there was a little bit of elation, but you know, that comes along with those people who are not on the list and the families, and now what? And it's just excruciating. And then, you know, slowly they feel like the grip of the world attention loosening, which is, you know, a tremendous fear, tremendous apprehension. And then we haven't even gotten into like the mistrust of the government and all that. That's, you know, that'll come.
That's later.
Much later. So that was really something. And like there's so much that we can all do, you know, and it's keep davening and keep you know, just keep writing those letters and keep sending the text to your Israeli friends, and keep signing petitions and keep sending emails to get, you know, university presidents fired and whatever. So yeah. uh I wrote a letter to Elise Stefanik also. You should write to her. If you haven't, write to her. Tell her just thank you. She wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal last Friday, and she said that piece of congressional testimony is now the most watched piece of congressional testimony in history.
I
Seen
believe it. It
over
was
a
so powerful.
billion
It was
times.
so. The only thing that could have been further, I know it would have been totally inappropriate. When she kept asking the question over and over, and they kept giving that same line about the policy, whatever, I would have loved it if they would have just said, what if instead of talking about anti-Semitism, we were talking about blacks? Like, I would have liked to say that right out there, because you would not have given the same line back of the policy of the university. I know they couldn't, but I really wish they would have just, but it was so powerful.
Right. It was, I think it was a watershed moment. I mean, I don't know what the long-term effect will be, but it certainly was a watershed moment, I think, in history of you know, Jews, anti-Semitism in America. Really important, but you know, it was important, and we have to have our voices heard. So it's yeah, a lot doing, but we still have a lot more to do. So all right, so I'm gonna just switch to the text now. Let me go to this. You see it? Okay, there we go.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're in the middle of chapter 13. We're in we saw some of the doling out of the land, and then we're going to get a little bit into Kalev, but let's just finish up. So now notice how it goes back to almost to Bamidbar, but Moshe Rabbeinu. Remember, there's 2.5 tribes that are situated on the eastern side of the Israeli border, what we call Transjordan. So it's Reuven and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, and so those 2.5 tribes. And so Vayitain Moshe Lamate Bnei Reuven Lemishvachosam. So Moshe gave to the tribe of Reuven their, again, they use the word clans. This is the Sephardic translation. These are various clans. Vayilem hagvul me aroer asher al sas nachal arnon vayir asher b'toch nachal v'chol misha ad medva. And it became theirs, the territory from Aroer on the edge of the Wadi Arnon, and the town in the middle of the Wadi up to Medva, the entire tableland. Now, this is all on the maps that we had looked at, but it's also exactly how it reads in Bamidbar. So you could very well be reading this out of the end of Sefer Bamidbar or parts of Devarim in the recap, as opposed to just reading it right here. Cheshbon v'chol areh asher b'mishar divon uvamos bal v'bein ubeis bal ma'on. Cheshbon and all the towns in that area, Divon, Bamot Baal, Beit Baal Ma'on, Yachaz Kedmot, Yahatza Kedmot Umifa'at. And they translate it as Yachaz, Kedmot, and Mifa'ath. Kiryatayim Sibma, Seret HaShachar Bahar HaEmek, Kiryatayim Sibma, Aaron in the hill of the valley. These are only words that people who lane, it makes you, you know, it trips you up, because everybody always says Shibma when really the word is Sibma. Ubeit Paor v'Ashdod haPisga, Ubeit Hashemot. Beit Paor and the slopes of Pisgah. So this is, again, you look at it on the map, okay, these are all the areas on the Transjordan. V'chol arei hamishor v'chol mamlachos Sichon melech HaMori asher malach b'cheshbon. Asher hikam Moshe oso v'esnisiyei Midyan v'esvevi esrekem v'estzur v'eschur v'esreva nisichei Sichon yoshevei haaretz. All the towns of the tableland and the entire kingdom of Sichon. Again, you talk about Sichon, you talk about Og, all the kings of the Amorites who reigned in Heshbon, because Moshe defeated them, and he defeated the Midianites and Evi, Rechem, Tzur. Now, by the way, these places also appear in the Gemara in several places in the Talmud, especially places like Evi and Rechem, because when they're trying to figure out the boundaries of Israel, because many laws in the Talmud are dependent on what is considered inside of Israel, what's considered outside of Israel. So, for instance, simply, let's say you talk about Yontif. Do you have to keep 1 day or 2 days Yontif? Or for Truma and Maser, any of the agricultural laws that apply in the land of Israel, do they apply in these other places as well? We had touched upon it a while back. A few weeks ago, we talked about, is Eilat considered part of Israel? Most people agree that it does, and you would keep 1 day, but, if you're going to go to Eilat for Yontif, that's a whole other story. Ve'ez Bilam ben Ba'or ha'kosem hargu b'nei Yisrael b'cherev chalehem. And here they have to add in, because these are all the triumphs of all those kings, of which finally he gave Reuven their territory. But part of the territory, part of that, and it's also listed at the end of the story in Bamidbar, is that the fact that Bilam was killed. So Bilam, of course, we know the story. Bilam is an interesting chapter in the book of Bamidbar because it's the only chapter which does not directly involve the children of Israel. So the whole story of Bamidbar is about Bnei Yisrael, what they're doing, and then it's like we're going to zoom out and look at the side. And by the way, this was something that was happening. It's about them and it's sort of to them, but they may not have even known that this took place. Is that Balak hires Bilam and the whole back and forth and the seven and the ben, the animal, but all of it, none of it involves. It's all external from the goings on in the camp of Bnei Yisrael. But he was considered an enemy. If you want to take it a little further, the Gemara and the Medrash, they add in that Bilam was one of 3 advisors of Paro. It says that Paro had 3 advisors. The Gemara says, the Gemara in Sota, that when he wanted to do with the Jewish people, so Bilam says we should kill them. And Yisro says, no, we shouldn't kill them. You shouldn't do anything bad to them. And the third one, who was sort of indifferent, was Job. So Yisro was rewarded. He becomes, Moshe's father-in-law, and he's the priest of many nations. Bilam is Bilam. He's evil, and he gets killed here at the end of Bamidbar. And Eov is destined to a life of suffering because he was kind of indifferent. He was quiet. Now, to make it even better, to make the story even better, is that when we're not quite there yet, we're only in Miketz, but soon we're going to hear the story of Moshe. What happened to Moshe is 16, 17 years old in the beginning of Shemos. He goes and he sees what's happening with the suffering, and he has to flee. And he goes to Midian, right? Mm-hmm. The next time we see Moshe at the end of Shemos, he's almost 80 years old, right? It says Moshe is 80 and Aaron is 83. So he's teetering around 80. What did he do from the time he was about 20 till he was 80? So it's unclear, because he just meets Tzipporah then, because at the end, only when he's around 80, that's when we're told that he marries Tzipporah. He has a baby and the bris and the thing and the malon. So there's an interesting corpus of Medrash. It's about 8 or 10 pages long. It's called Toldos Moshe Rabbeinu. Whether it's considered authentic Medrash or not, the Even Ezra quotes it in some places. But some say that Moshe first, he fled not to Midian, which is probably like Saudi Arabia, but he fled to Africa because he was in Egypt, so he fled that way. He fled towards Ethiopia. If he flees towards Ethiopia, and it says that there was a rogue king there that was torturing the people, and they needed someone to save them from this rogue king, and sure enough, that was Moshe Rabbeinu. Who was the rogue king? It was Bilam. Oh. And Moshe saves the people from Bilam, and they make Moshe the king. And what's one of the things that they have to do to give Moshe the king, to be the king? You have to have a queen. But he knew that he couldn't be married to an African woman, so he married her, but he never lived with her. Mm-hmm. And by the way, what's Ethiopia? Ethiopia's Cush. So in Parshas Baloscha, when it says that Miriam and Aaron are speaking, by the way, Isha Kushida Shelakach. So the Ibn Ezra and others bring this story there, but it just kind of brings things full circle about how the original nemesis of Moshe Rabbeinu is Bilam. And here at the end of the story of Moshe Rabbeinu and the end of the story of Bamidbar, which is the end of the Chumash for all intents and purposes, we're talking about how Bilam tries to curse the Jewish people. He's hired by Balak. He has no, oh, Moshe, yeah, I'll go after him. And what happens is that he fails and Moshe kills him. But that's everything. But we see how we're bringing this back, that whatever's happening here is coming right back here in Yehoshua in chapter 13, but we're talking about what Moshe Rabbeinu did in the end of the Chumash. Vayigvul b'nei Reuven hayardein ugvul zos nachlas b'nei Reuven shechos ha'rev v'chatzreihem. So this is the boundary of Reuven. It's the edge of the Jordan. That's for all of their towns and their families and their villages, etc. Now, so that's Reuven. Then we have Gad. Vayitain Moshe lamate Gad l'fnei Gad l'mishpachosam. Moshe then gives to God and all their clans, this is what he gives them. Again, more detailed places, but you look at it on a map and you could see, because this is important to have these things on the map. But by the way, you could see on a map today, if you look in Transjordan in some places, you'll see these places come up. Vayilehem hagvul yazer v'chol ha'rei Gilad v'chatzi eretz b'nei Amon ad ora'er ashal p'nei Rabbah, became the Yazer, all the towns of Gilad, from the Ammon country, which is close to Rabbah, umecheshbon ad Ramat hamitzpeh ubotnim, umachanayim agvul advir, from Cheshbon to Ramat mitzpeh bitonim, and Machanayim to the border of Lidbir. Again, these are places that are already going to be up near Syria. And we have these mountainous regions. If you read the stories of like the Yom Kippur War, like in the Hermon region, of the battles that they had, on the Syrian side of the Hermon, Israeli side of the Hermon, all these types of things, this all comes into play. Okay, we did that until Lidbir. Ube'emek beit Haram ubeit Nimra v'Sukkot v'Tzafon yeter mamluchot Sichon melech Heshbon Haryadein ugvul agatei Yam Kinneret Evar Yarden Mizracha. So in the valley, Beit Haram, Beit Nimra, Sukkot, Yafon, the rest of the kingdom of Sichon, the king of Heshbon, already all the way down to the edge of the Jordan, up to the sea of the Kinneret. So you see, the top of the Kinneret. And then, of course, where the the Kinneret to the Yarden, etc., you can see that's it's a natural dividing line, but that's of course on the eastern side of this. Zos nachalas b'nei Gad l'mishpachosam ha'arim v'chatzreihem. This is the portion of the Gadites and those towns and those villages. Then we have it's Reuven, Gad, and then we have half the tribe of Menashe. Vayitein Moshe l'chatzi shevet Menashe, v'hi l'chatzi matei b'nei Menashe l'mishpachosam. And the half tribe of Menashe, Moshe gave the following. So the half tribe they got for all their families. Their territory is Machanayim, Bashan, king of Og Melech HaBashan. Here's Og again. We're still talking about Og. Og we were talking about already in Bereshis, with Noach. Anyway, he has Chavos Yair, 60 towns. V'chatzi Hagilod v'Ashtaros v'Edrei Arei Malchos Og Bashan. Livnei Machir ben Menashe l'chatzi b'nei Machir l'mishpachosam. And part of the Gilad, Ashtaros and Edrei, the royal cities of Og and Bashan, were assigned to the descendants of Machir, the son of Menashe, to a part of their descendants of Machir for their various clans. And Eila Asher Nichal Moshe B'Arvos Moav Me'evel Yarden Yerichel Mizracha. Those then were all the portions that Moshe assigned in the steppes of Moab on the east side of the Jordan. However, Ulashevet Halevi Lo Nasan Moshe Nachala Hashem Lekesul Nachalasam Kasher Diber Lehem. However, the Levium, of course, they never get anything, and that's already dictated in Vayikra. It's dictated in Bamidbar. Levium never had a chelik in the land. They never had a portion. Why do you think that's so?
הם עבדו בבית המקדש, הם קיבלו את המעשר.
Yeah, so I mean, what would you rather have? Being married to a Levi, right?
מחכה תמיד לתרומות.
You're still waiting, Mimi, right? Mimi Mechaka. That's gonna be like my new children's book. So the look, I mean, it sounds almost, I don't know, Christian but like God is your portion.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says. It says Hashem Elokei Yisrael Hu Nachalasam Kasher Diber Lehem. what's your portion? Hashem is your portion. Okay, if Hashem is your portion, then that's exactly what we're talking about. So this is the, and I know we saw it last time, but you can see here the. Let me look at this one here. So you can see the border of Israel, and then all the territories of how it's divided. It's almost like they're stacked. You have tribe, half tribe, but all lined up, and it's almost like they fortified Israel itself. Now, mind you, that this goes back to the story where they're finally getting into the land of Israel, and they approach Moshe and they say, "Listen, we don't really want to go in." And this is to reiterate their commitment, the deal that was made with Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why this has to all go back to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's as if this right now, this end of this chapter is really not about Yehoshua. It's about Moshe. Moshe makes a deal with them, and he says, "Listen, this is what you have to commit to: is that you're not going to settle any of your lands until they settle their lands first. They're going to conquer first, which we saw the 7 years of conquering. Now we're getting to division, but until everybody gets their portion, you're not going to get anything." And that's kind of the price that they pay for admission. That's the price that they pay so that they can have that sort of deal. How it's looked on ultimately historically, and I one has to look at it as sort of like a pachin ponim of after all this and 40 years in the desert, and you finally get into the land of Israel, and you don't even want to go there for whatever reason. We have a lot of kids, we have a lot of animals, we have a lot of possessions, whatever. But I think it's kind of indicative of in general, the diaspora mode of what's going on. I don't think there's been a I don't know how I don't know how people feel right now about the diaspora. I mean right now, like literally right now. I'm sure like somebody who was, Rachel, I don't know if you're still like doing like college essays and stuff like that now. Like the inspiration for Jewish kids to want to apply to colleges today has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
What I've seen, when I spoke to the girls in schools and boys in schools in Israel, I was speaking to them, speak to the teachers, and I just kind of go around and I'm like, "Oh, so where are you going next year?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah. How are you?" Like this. Michigan, it's like it's and there's a healthy kind of, I don't know if you call it fear or
It's
just
true.
kind of unease. There's a
Mhm.
tremendous unease about what's the state of things right now, and it didn't start on October 7th.
No.
It didn't. It just kind of just became much more pronounced, and in the days since then. So, in some ways, it's making college decisions easier, and in some ways, it's making it much harder. I mean, I don't know. It's a very, very, very scary thing out there. But we can learn a lot from this. Of like when you have Israel given to you, and you have the ability to go in, and it's allotted to you, and then you choose not to take it. What does that say about you? Right? The number one question I get asked all the time in Israel is always like, "Why don't you live here?" And it's probably the number one nagging thing, in my life, I would guess you would say, is, why, so look, I have an answer for it. I have a good answer for it, but it doesn't make it any less nagging. It doesn't make it any less challenging. We have life here is very good, very easy, at least, up until a certain point. The question is, what happens going forward? But here in a biblical sense, and the Torah kind of like digs this all up again, and in great detail, going over all the places. In other words, everybody has their place in Israel, and here you are on the other side. And it'll become only more pronounced when we start the next chapter, when we talk about, we're going to go back to also a long lost figure, somebody we haven't seen in a long time. We're talking a lot about Yehoshua, but who didn't we talk about? We didn't talk about Kalev. Whatever happened to Kalev? Kalev was the other good guy. So when we get into the next chapter, God willing, we're gonna see more about Kalev, and it's really like a retelling of a story, and we're gonna have to look at this and compare it with the story of the Meraglim, of when it happened in Kalev and the way it's related here, and you'll get a much better appreciation also of the whole long vision, big time long view of history, and why certain things are highlighted now and not highlighted then. And that's all this comes to bear. But this is all part of, so you think it's like these kind of like dry not such exciting psukim about giving out places and land and marks on a calendar and on maps and places like that. But in actuality, you're actually just going over and retracing and recreating what we saw in the end of Bamidbar. So if you want to look back, you look back in Parshas Matos, the Parshas Maseh, and you see what's going on there, and then you look at these psukim, you're like, oh my God, here we are, we're coming full circle, and it's exactly as Moshe Rabbeinu said it was going to be, and exactly how Yehoshua followed through, and this is all taking place, and now we're moving forward, because we have to put all these pieces in a row and able to do that. So, God willing, next time, that's about as much as I could talk right now, but that's about as much as, next time we'll see Kalev. It's really, I would suggest if you can to shoot ahead and start reading the next chapter. It's really, really interesting, before we get back to more of the dry stuff. But the story of Kalev, and then getting into well, we'll hit the end of the book soon. So have a great trip, Dina.
Thank you.
Keep us posted, and everyone should just feel well. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank
Yes.
you. Feel good.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Good day.
החלמה מהירה.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Feel better.